Hi everyone and welcome. I'm down here in my wormery. My wormery consists of basically a bunch of trays on those shelves back there, as well as a bag over in that frame off on the side. I've got worms in those worm bins and they're all composting cardboard, paper, kitchen scraps, used coffee, you name it. All kinds of stuff that would normally just go into your everyday trash. I prefer to give it to the worms. What I'm left with is some really nice compost that I could feed to my plants in my garden. And I also get that kind of, satisfied feeling that I'm not dumping all kinds of stuff into the trash, sending it to the landfill when it's not necessary to do so. So there's a certain degree of satisfaction that comes from that, whether it's knowing that I'm giving my plants some really good stuff that makes them healthy, or, just doing my part to try to help the environment. So I've got a couple systems back there. One of them is the one that's directly behind me on the top shelf. It's actually the oldest of my systems right there. The other one that we're going to be working on today is the one that's down on the shelf below it in the middle. Both of those systems have African nightcrawlers in them, and I've got some notes here, like I do sometimes. I've jotted down some information about the two bins that I've got on the hit list today, and they're like I said earlier, they're both African nightcrawler systems. And one of them is 155 days old. The younger of the two is 130 days old. Both of them are doing pretty nicely. The older one's received so far 18 feedings, and the younger 15. I had already at one point with the older one thought that I might actually start driving that one towards harvest. But then I pulled away from that. I figured, I got a little bit more room in there. I'll just let the system keep going and just, keep using it as a composting bin. But at some point soon, I think I will reach that point where I'm going to want to try to harvest the castings and get the worms into a new spot. And with these bins, there's a couple things going on. Right now, I haven't really been using them for everyday composting. I've been trying to deal with getting rid of a bunch of these little itsy-bitsy white mites that I've been finding in them. And they're not really the end of the world, but I'd really just prefer to see their numbers reduced or just, see them gone entirely. So I'm trying a few things with these bins to see what I could do in terms of reducing their numbers. And one of them is withholding food. So it's been 11 days since these bins were last fed, and it was actually 4 days ago that we checked in on them, not to feed, but just to try to apply a couple other things other than the reduction of food to see if we can help combat the mite situation. One of them was to remove the plastic coverings that were keeping the moisture within the bins to try to let the systems dry out a bit, because a drier system will usually be one where the mites won't thrive as much. They really like the damp environment. Then another thing I've been doing, you can see some notes down here, what I did 4 days ago. Besides removing the plastic to try to promote drying, I also was trying to use some pulverized limestone, some lime, to see if I can control the pH. It's calcium carbonate, I think, is the chemical, but basically it's meant to try to reduce acidity, if in fact that's the cause. I can't say that that's the cause. I never did any sort of tests to see the pH, but I figured as long as I'm trying to deal with mites, I'm going to try reducing the food, reducing the moisture, see if I can also reduce the acidity, if in fact one or all of those are contributing factors to the outbreak. So I'm going to get these systems up onto the bench. Today, my game plan is really not adding more calcium carbonate, not adding more lime, not feeding either. I'm really just looking to agitate the material, stir it up a little bit. I would think that after 4 days, material on the very top is probably dried some. So I'm going to be tilling that up, moving the dry stuff down, moving the more damp stuff up, and at the same time, just trying to see how the mite situation is doing. Are the numbers reducing? Are we driving things in the right direction? I'm curious to see. So let's get started. We're going to start here with the younger of the two systems, the 130-day bin. And previously, when I was covering up with the plastic to try to prevent evaporation, right below that plastic, this piece of paper was really super damp. Always a place that you would find lots and lots of worms hanging out, but also lots and lots of mites. So now that it's had a chance to dry off, I'm not surprised to see neither type of creature hanging out there. I'm assuming that once we dig down below the surface, where the material is still kind of damp, that's probably where we're going to still see mites. I'm not expecting that the mite population would have, in this short period of time, just vanished. My only hope is that hopefully, I mean, I don't know, I'm just hoping that maybe their numbers have been reduced by some. You know, this is actually the second time I'm trying a similar approach to this. It was maybe a month ago or so that I had withheld feedings from these bins for a good couple weeks at least to see if I can, you know, improve things. And then I just sort of decided I would get back to the norm and start feeding again and start returning the plastic coverings to help moisture recirculate. But the mites just started becoming kind of annoying, so I really wanted to see what I could do about dealing with them. I'm seeing like the little stem of a plant here, or whatever, maybe some vegetable or whatever, and I can already see some little scraps of leftovers here too. So I don't think it's going to be any sort of a problem in terms of the worms not having any food to eat. There's probably other leftovers down here too. The coffee filter that was right down here in the middle was just indicating where we last fed. The stuff out on the surface is quite dry, you know. Normally this stuff is pretty much soaked from the recirculating moisture. So I'll be glad to, you know, blend in this dry stuff, get it down low, and allow it to suck up moisture from the surrounding material. I guess I'm curious to see what kind of leftovers are still in here. Yeah, after 11 days, I would think there's probably still a good amount of food remaining in these systems, but we'll see. Let's see what we could do about checking out the leftovers, you know, because the most damp material in the bin is going to be near the food, and I also assume that the greatest number of mites is also going to be right there too, where the moisture and the food itself is. So, but for me, it's usually easiest to see what's the deal with the mites when I play the video back really quickly. And I can only really do that on the computer upstairs after I've wrapped things up here and I've placed the captured footage into my video editor. So I think what we'll do here is we'll just rummage really quickly to check out the leftovers, pile them up a little bit, and if along the way we start to see what appears to be a concentration of little white specks, we'll just let the camera run. I'll move my hand out of the frame and we'll play it back later to see what the mite situation is. The other white stuff we're seeing everywhere, this is the powder, this is that the lime. So I don't want to confuse the appearance of white stuff. You know, if it's lime, I want to try to recognize the fact that what I'm seeing is lime. And that's not what we're interested in seeing. We're interested in seeing mites to see what the deal is with the mites. So why don't we, I guess it is tough to tell the difference. So I'm thinking maybe we'll pick through for the food afterwards. Let me just do a little bit of a kind of a fresh tilling up of the material here, and then I'll just pull my hand away and we'll be able to check out what the video shows us. So let's do that. Let's just back away and see what we see. So I wanted to allow the camera to roll for at least a few minutes so that when we play it back we could actually see some movement. And even though I can't see it already in real time, I think what I am seeing though all over the place, like all these little white specks, primarily on this perhaps chunk of leftover food, whatever it may be, and on this chunk of food, which is where you would kind of expect to see them. I think I am seeing a pretty good number of mites hanging out still. So, yeah, it'll probably do this bin good to continue drying. I'm not sure, you know, I mean, some people have said, you know, go to town, you could put as much of that lime in there as you like. I guess from the perspective of the worms, it's just kind of a calcium rock dust, whatever you want to consider it, something that the worms, you know, neither are bothered by or, you know, are even interested in for that matter, so they're just going to kind of ignore it. I think other people have suggested that, hey, didn't you put maybe too much in there? I really do not know. So I wouldn't mind some input on that if somebody has some experience or knowledge on the topic. So yeah, here we go. Let's just start restoring things, but the important thing here, I guess, right, is the excavation of the more damp stuff from down below. Try to get it out onto the surface where it would have a chance to expel some of its moisture. But we'll just drop in all this stuff that made up the feeding zone back into the middle where we found it, and then we could turn up the outer edges of the bin a little bit as well. So I think we've got most of it. There's all kinds of different food scraps in here, certainly plenty to keep them going for a while. It was in this bin, I think, where we did see a good number of leftovers in the past. It was in the next bin that we're going to go check in on, in the VermiBag tote, where I think we had already observed 4 days ago, last time we checked in here, what appeared to be very few leftovers. I thought I saw like a banana peel and maybe the stem of a head of lettuce or something, but not a whole lot of anything else. So I'll be curious to see what's going on in there, and I'm gonna, even if it's looking like it could use some food, I'm gonna try to resist the urge to give them more food. Because even though it might look like they're running low on the stuff that I've been giving them on a regular basis, the system probably has, you know, an abundant amount of stuff that they can utilize as nourishment without me having to worry. I'm actually a little bit surprised because, you know, I thought that this lime would blend in and almost kind of vanish, but I do feel like I'm seeing good amounts of it all over the place. So I think this is also a good opportunity to continue blending in the pulverized lime to make sure it's, you know, well blended into the system, into all the material. Okay. So everything does feel like it has a much more consistent dampness to it. Nothing feels dry anymore. I think I've succeeded in sinking most, if not all, of the really dry stuff that had been coating the top surface here. And we'll let it go for another few days. It doesn't seem to require much more than a couple days for the, you know, the top maybe quarter-inch, half-inch of material to dry out quite nicely. So I might come back in here on a semi-regular basis to keep trying to stir this stuff around and keep trying to promote the drying of the material. And I really hope it produces some positive results. Who knows? I mean, with the age of these two systems, what we're doing here now could potentially even segue into eventually just maybe giving the bins a chance to just forage through and let the worms really work out, you know, what remains in here as far as little scraps, you know, because there's, you could see everywhere little bits of this, little bits of that. And for that to be really successful, I feel you do want to have a pretty high level of moisture when you're doing that so-called foraging stage, because then the worms will, you know, not be turned away by any dry portions of the bin. They'll go pretty much everywhere and anywhere and break down all the stuff in the bin. So when I start into that foraging phase, I will want to cover up again to, you know, promote the retention of what moisture is in the bin, especially on the top surface and near the edges. And I think that'll create an environment where that foraging has really good results. But, you know, right now, I think my focus is dealing with mites. So this was the one where the situation seemed worse, I think. So we'll see. We'll get over into the VermiBag tote, where I think maybe we'll see a little bit less. So let's let's get that one over here and we'll continue. It seems odd. I thought for whatever reason that this system might actually have more material in it than the other one, but it feels lighter, so maybe I was wrong. Doesn't matter. You can see there's plenty of space in here if I want to just keep going and going. I don't know. But for whatever reason, when I start to approach 150 days, and with this one being 155 days of age, I just start getting this feeling like, you know, it's time to move the worms on into a fresh space and get the castings out of here. I believe in my tracking spreadsheet, 155 days, which is the age of this bin, is somewhere in the neighborhood of what my average bin's start to finish age is. So even though we're still sort of in that feeding phase of this bin, we have yet to get into what I refer to as foraging, or not even close to attempting migration of the worms out of the compost. We're already at the age where I would normally be done with a bin. So there again, I shouldn't feel pressure by the numbers. You know, I just I should really just treat each bin individually and give it what it needs and steer it towards what's best for that particular bin. And if some systems take longer, so be it, right? I shouldn't be feeling compelled to do anything just because of a number, because of the age. So here I'm seeing little varied stems, so a couple food scraps on the surface. One thing I'm noticing though is that the material here on the top surface doesn't seem quite as dry as what we saw on the surface of the other system. Maybe it's because that other piece of paper that was covering that other system was much more tattered. Maybe we just had slightly better coverage. Although I've always been under the impression that, you know, a single sheet of newspaper or coffee filter or something isn't going to do much for us in terms of preventing evaporation. But maybe there is a difference. Or, you know, I guess maybe the other explanation is that this is a slightly more mature bin by almost a month, I would say. Meaning it just might have material that has a far greater capability of retaining the moisture within itself. Because castings just have a tremendous capability of hanging on to moisture. And maybe that's the reason. So, whatever, just an observation. And I just can't seem to help theorizing on explanations to things when I make an observation. So I think this is going to be a piece of paper towel. Yep. Last time we poked around in here, only a few days ago, 4 days ago, we did notice paper towel. We noticed what appeared to be almost an entire complete banana peel. And a couple other odds and ends, but not much. There was very few leftovers in here. But I am noticing a good number of worms right down the middle in what the feeding zone would have consisted of. So I'm not really here to observe worms. I'm here to observe mites. Even though it would be fun just to turn this whole feeding zone inside out and check out all the worms. I could tell there's a good number of them. I got a feeling that this bin has quite a bit more in terms of worm population than the other one we just checked in on. So maybe we'll check out the worms in a moment. Let's just see if we can create a little bit of an excavated area here to see if we can use the fast playback of the video to observe mites. Here is the piece of food that I believe would be the greatest attractor of mites, a banana peel. Well, I'm not really seeing much. Just wondering if there's something else in here that we can potentially observe a good number of mites on. But I think I like what I'm seeing here, so let's just let's let the camera roll for a second. We'll be able to better see in the video. But I can already see stuff over here that looks like mites. All right, let's let it roll here too. All right, go. Well, I think now that the worms have cleared away, it's much easier to see that this stuff over here has got a good number of mites on it. Over here on the side too, I could see them in pretty good numbers. So my only hope is that the numbers are in some way reducing to a certain degree. And I'm glad that there's still banana peel and some other varied items in here, because it does seem like this bin is got a somewhat greater appetite than the other bin that we just checked in on. I think it's probably because there are probably a little bit greater number of worms in here too. I could be wrong, I'm not sure. So yeah, I think this is the time for us to start maybe scooping some of this more dry stuff that was out here on the outskirts. And we'll dump that down in there so that it can absorb some of the moisture that this food kicks off. Even though there's not much of it left. Banana peel, that's paper. It's banana peel right here. It's coming along pretty nicely. I don't remember what else we saw here. There wasn't much, right? So here again, let's just see if we can grab a little bit more dry to go over where the food is. Then we can just do a little upturning of the stuff out here on the edge too. Here too, this white stuff, I don't think it's mites. I think it's just more of the pulverized lime that we scattered in here before. But all in all, the material in this bin is just so nice. I mean, yeah, there's little bits and pieces of whatnot in here, little pieces of paper, little sticks, stuff that might take longer. But you know, since this is all material that is just for personal use, stuff that I'm just going to place into my own garden outside, it doesn't have to be like a show quality or, you know, a retail quality material. I can, you know, place it into my garden with the knowledge that the material will eventually just break down out there, the same it would break down in here. So even though it's not perfect, it's good enough for me. Very nice. So I don't know. I think we're pretty much done with what I had hoped to accomplish here today, which is just combining, you know, some of the stuff that has had a chance to dry out here on the surface with some of the more damp stuff down low. And hopefully we, you know, start to see some improvement here. I'll return these coverings just the way I found them, because I think without the plastic coverings we are promoting the drying of the material in the bin. But it does seem like maybe these paper coverings are doing a slightly better job than that really tattered newspaper we have on the other system. But that's fine. Either way, I think we're in good shape here. So there's not much to do here as far as cleaning up and putting away. I'll rinse off my glove and put these things back up on the shelf, but I'm not going to bore you with that because that's all boring. I'm going to wrap things up here, but before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a quick thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.